Hi folks, in the video I made last week, I talked about Jesus being God, and of course I wasn't surprised when people started to respond to that video saying that Jesus is not God, that in fact the idea was planted into the hearts of Christians by the early church. And that's the whole essence of making the video was to plant the seed, the thoughts into the hearts of men, and then leave the Holy Spirit to do the rest. I'm not the one that convinces people. Neither does any man convince people. It's the Holy Spirit. I totally understand why humans cannot reconcile Jesus as God. I've been there. It took a while for me to get to this point, to see Jesus for who he really is. Many people see Jesus in their mind's eye. Jesus is the sacrificial lamb that walked the face of the earth and taught great things. In fact, in Luke chapter 24, we see how his followers who saw him do miraculous acts, they heard him teach. I want to believe these two people in the book of Luke chapter 24 were people who were part of the 70 people who used to follow him. And it says in verse 19, Jesus said, "What things?" In fact, for context, they were walking back to Emmaus, and Jesus suddenly appeared and says, what are you guys still talking about so intently? And they looked at him like, "Guy, where have you been? Like, everyone knows what happened in these past days." And Jesus was like, "What things?" And they responded, "The things that happened to Jesus, the man from Nazareth," they said. "He was a prophet who did powerful miracles, and he was a mighty teacher in the eyes of God and all the people." That was how they saw him. They saw him as a teacher. They saw him as a prophet. But there is a point in the life of a believer where you need to see Jesus as God. And again, I am expecting people to say, "Oh no, Jesus is not God." I'll take you to, we all know John 1, chapter 1, right? Like, very famous. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God." And hear this part, "The Word was God." How is that difficult? Why are we not hearing that? Let's hear it. The Word was God. Jesus is God. And until you see him as God, you can't call him